Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to another episode of Coptic Youth Radio Hour here on 92.3 FM, 3ZZZ, and also in association with the CYC Tuned In show. Your host, Mark Risk, and on the program today I've got Mina Alias, I've got Belinda, and I've got Daniel Mahreb making his debut today. Very glad to have you, Daniel. First of many, hopefully.
Debut.
Yeah, we always like to welcome our new guests here so they can come again.
Yeah, make them come back.
Yeah, exactly. On the program today, we have some beautiful hymns. We've also got our social topic in which we discuss the segregation in the church, so the separation between why men and women sit separately during the liturgy. We also talk about, in our spiritual topic, we discuss the book of Matthew, chapter 18, verse 1 to 9, when Jesus is talking about plucking your eye out if it causes you to sin. We'll elaborate on that a little bit. We've also got Dice's news. Also, as soon as the program finishes, you can always catch it on our SoundCloud account. Just Google 3ZZZ Coptic Youth Radio. And if we're also on iTunes, so if you have a podcast application, just search Coptic Youth Radio. And we're also there if you can't catch the live recording of the program, Thursdays at 2 o'clock. So make sure to get to that. That's it from me for now. Stay tuned. We're back here on Coptic Youth Radio. Just wanted to discuss in our social topic. I'm just here with Mina, Belinda, and Daniel. We wanted to talk about how in our church, when you enter the church, we see the men sitting on the left-hand side, and then we see the women sitting on the right-hand side. And we wanted to sort of get an idea of why that is. Why do we have seating segregation in our church? Is it based on tradition? What is it from? And we thought we'd sort of do a little bit of research and find out why. So Mina, what do you... Initial process, like why do you think we do that?
I think it's definitely a cultural or traditional. Definitely start off as a cultural sort of aspect to, church service and how our early church started. We have back in the time of 200 AD. We have back in the time where it was what was his name? Saint Hippolytus or. And the one before as well, where they pretty much, had this opinion that when we do the kissing of the hands, that men and women shouldn't be, collaborating together, and it should be just men with men and women with women. And I think back at that time, it was really kind of started this tradition of, men standing by themselves and women standing by themselves as well.
Yeah, Saint Hippolytus, the apostolic. He's in 230 AD. He made mention that when in that part of the mass when we kissing of the hands, he said shouldn't be with men and women. Men shouldn't do it with women, and vice versa. Should be men with men, women with women. But also before that, Saint John Chrysostom as well. He made mention of how in Noah's Ark it was 2 by 2, and the gates were shut up behind him. So that's why we look at it now as the men are together and the women together, just praying separately like that. But yeah, Daniel, what do you think of this?
Well, I think it could be like part cultural, but I think the point behind it was just to assure some sort of equality between people. If they're they allowed men and women to be together, you're gonna find like each family like it's gonna be separated from the others, people who are couples and everything. So I think it's gonna be for the widowed one and the single people. They won't feel like they're fit in, or like it's gonna be more separated than it's just for men and women. So I think it's when it's just for men and women, it's easier to like fit in any community or anything like that.
Yeah, it's more sort of inclusive. You don't want the married couple and people with children to be sitting together, and all the single people to be sitting by themselves. It's a bit, like it's not that inclusive, and it doesn't have that community feel to it.
And then, but you mentioned earlier that what would happen if, say, a Catholic couple or a couple not of the Orthodox religion came in and, they don't know anyone and they see men on one side, women on the other. What, are they expected to sit on each side, or, will it make them feel welcome to the church? They're being separated straight away. What's the thoughts of, an outsider? Yeah,
that's the other aspect to it. Like, say, for example, someone from the church marries someone from outside who isn't accustomed to this tradition. They come to the church and they're not really the partner. They come to the church at Mass and they don't really know anyone at the church, and they struggle to sort of fit in, and they find it comfortable to stay with their husband or the wife, to stay close together. So I think there's, in most of our church, I know at St. Mark's, we have like a place at the back where people stand together. The men and the women sort of stand together. And I think a lot of the newly married couples, they sort of do that until they build up this comfort level, or they meet more people in the church, and then they're more integrated in the church, the partner or whoever is coming from outside. And then I think they feel comfortable after that just to sit separately on that.
So is it actually expected by the church that a strange couple that came in would separate? So if they decided on this day that they wanted to sit together on the men's side, would that be an issue for the church? Yeah. It's quite specific?
Yeah, I think they allow them to stand in the back, but I don't think they would allow you to have your wife in the middle of the aisle or something, or in the middle of the procession of the Mass.
So do we think that could be a major deterrent of, people from other denominations who want to learn more about the Orthodox Church? Or
it works both ways. Like, I think sometimes when people are coming into our church, they're accepting of our tradition and how our early church fathers sort of decided on the best practices for us today. And I think we have to sort of continue that tradition.
Yeah, it is a bit of a deterrent, I do agree, but like our church is more a church of tradition where it's got strict disciplinary kind of customs that we're used to. If you look at the Catholic Church and some of the other churches, they're more a little bit kind of flexible, a little bit more lenient with how they kind of go about their services. But with our church, I think we've definitely become accustomed to that sort of strict discipline, strict order of tradition. And I think sometimes, I agree, in this day and age, it's a bit of a deterrent. But at the same time, it's our tradition. And, our church, the Orthodoxy Church, means a church of tradition. So it's hard to kind of... it's hard to balance that out with, the day and age that we live in today. Yeah.
Do you think, like, say, another reason would be, like, if we had men and women sitting together, the men might be a little bit distracted with the women's presence there.
Possibly.
Like,
I don't know what was. I can't really.
During the Eid, everyone's dressed up really nicely and stuff, and
A bit of a controversial one.
Distraction.
Yeah, it might be a distraction.
Look, I don't know what was going through their minds. Like, I don't know what was going through St. John Chrysostom's mind when, they started this sort of tradition. Like why, they decided to, come up with such a rule, if you will. But yeah, it's it's interesting. All we know, I guess, is it's a tradition from the ancient fathers, and it's carried on till today.
What do you think, Daniel?
Well, I think because the thing about the Orthodox Church, it's like if you can change some of the cultural rule, you may be like changing some of the religious rule. So that's why we don't change like any of the cultural things. So I think that's the more specific thing about our church. It's like it's been the same since its beginning. So yeah, you can do with the culture things, like it's not gonna affect that much. It's better than being more flexible and like changing something more important.
Yeah, and I think that's what our church prides itself on.
Yeah,
it prides itself on the tradition, not changing just because society or the laws of the country or anything like that makes us. Society is making you change. Our church is steadfast and it's true to the faith. But yeah, so it's really fascinating and it's really interesting. I thought maybe we could discuss it, but yeah, so it originated from our church fathers, and they're the ones who sort of made that rule, and it's in other churches, say in other denominations. I think the Russian church or the Greek church, some of them sit together. In the Catholic, some sit together, some churches don't, and yeah. But I think in the Coptic church, in every single Coptic church, it's separated, men and women. Let us know what you guys think on our Facebook page, 92.3 FM, 3ZZZ Coptic Youth. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Coptic Youth Hour on 3ZZZ. Today for our spiritual topic we'll be discussing last week's Gospel. And in last week's Gospel, Jesus gives a strict rules, I guess you could say, for what it takes to enter into the kingdom of heaven. It's a really nice passage, and we'll be reading from the book of Matthew, chapter 18. I'll start off with from verse 1. At that time the disciples came to Jesus, saying, "Who then is greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" Then Jesus called a little child to him, set him in the midst of them, and said, "Assuredly I say to you, unless you are converted and become as little children, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven.
Therefore, whoever humbles himself as this little child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever receives one little child like this in my name receives me. Whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him if a millstone were hung around his neck and he were drowned in the depth of the sea."
Woe to the world because of offenses, for offenses must come, but woe to that man by whom the offenses comes. If your hand or foot causes you to sin, cut it off and cast it from you. It's better for you to enter into life lame or maimed, rather than having 2 hands or 2 feet to be cast into everlasting fire. And if your eyes cause you to sin, pluck it out and cast it from you. It's better for you to enter into life with 1 eye, rather than having 2 eyes to be cast into hellfire.
Quite amazing, isn't it?
That's really fascinating. That last bit, that's like, are you for real?
Pretty extreme stuff from Jesus. Obviously, giving a harsh practical view of the detriment that we can cause other people to stray away from God, and what that really the repercussions of that. And Jesus going to the extremes and mentioning how it's just easier for you to terminate the senses that causes you to do those things. It'll be much better for you to actually live your eternal life without those features, rather than those features causing you to sin. And we know of course, through Saint Samuel, who did pluck out his own eye and was a living example of this exact verse. Went to the extremes to what is said in this chapter, just so that he can prevent himself and save himself from going into eternal fire and give himself the chance to enjoy heaven.
So what are we saying here? Like, what do you guys think? Like,
does that mean it has to be literal?
Yeah, do we need to pluck our eyes out? Like, I think it's really
well. Saint Samuel definitely took it as a literal meaning. That's for sure. There's no doubt about it. But of course, these words are meant to be said in a way where really, you need to start thinking about and contemplating, about the way you influence people, and particularly, obviously, young children who are innocent and believe everything that they hear, easily influenced. They obviously got big learning and developmental stage of their life. So it's very important to take onus in the way that you approach them, and if you do it, even in the slightest wrong way, Jesus has clear instructions as to what can happen.
What do you think, Daniel? We see here it's like Jesus is talking and he's saying it's worse for you to put a stone around your neck than to do something
and drown yourself.
Yeah, and drown yourself and do something bad to a little child. What do you think?
Well, I think it's I don't know. I think it's that's.
It's just amazing. It's the harshness of the tone and the extreme example that Jesus gives is really really kind of sets the tone of what it really means to influence someone in the wrong way. Not only are you preventing yourself, but to disturb and to distract someone else from having a proper relationship with God is something that's just going above and beyond the line. You're really crossing that line, and Jesus really talks out about this and really kind of sets some really harsh.
But if you put it into the sort of like perspective in our day and age, none of us are sort of perfect. So does that mean we have to resort to that? Like, I don't think our church really sort of forces us or tells us that you need to do this. Or
I think this particular verse was specifically meant about the influence on others. So it's one thing to fall into sin and to recover from it yourself through confession and that sort of stuff with your own confession, Father. But to then go and cause someone else to sin is something really much more detrimental, much more severe and significant, because you're affecting someone else and you're influencing someone else to do the wrong thing and leading them astray. Is indifferent to what you're actually doing to yourself.
Yeah. And he especially mentions little child, and so like, Belinda, what do you think, like when he's specifically sort of talking to them about little children, and that they must keep them safe and not try and influence them with these bad things? What do you think? Like, we see that today, and it's like it's amazing how much we sort of the influence we have on little children, and how much we can corrupt them, because they're like a sponge, and they absorb everything that we feed them. So like,
I think the idea is because children are the form of innocence, and it's as you said, they can be easily persuaded. So it's important for them to have their innocence and to be brought up with what is right, which is what they know from a young age.
You know what else I found really, really amazing about this verse is that Jesus, the things that Jesus says is really, really applicable to what happens today. He mentions a lot of things about how people will kill you for the sake of other gods and all this sort of thing. And now he talks about persuading children. And we see it in this day and age, and with the videos that come out with ISIS members, for example, with their little kids and teaching them to do the wrong thing. So I think it's an amazing connection that some of the things that God warns us about is well and truly, doesn't matter how long ago he said it, is well and truly happening today. And it's it's really it's really on us, to take that on board and to take it as a responsibility rather than something that was never mentioned or you never pre-warned about. It's amazing really how the connection is definitely there.
What do you think there?
Well, what I think is like what was talking about here in this Bible is that talking about influence. Like he picked up children because they were like the easiest thing to be influenced. You could either influence them with something good or bad. So if you try to change anything about their innocence or anything, that's like the major thing you can do. Also, he took it to another level when he decided to even yourself. If your eyes is gonna influence you, you should with something bad, you should cut it off. Your hands, if it's gonna influence you with something bad, that's what you should cut it off. So that's what I thought about this period or the part. But it's not. I don't think it's something literally should be done. It's just about the influence or how we could affect innocence of something. If your hand's gonna affect your innocence, that should be you should cut it off.
But is there a practical way we can look at this and say and not have to resort to cutting our arm off or plucking your eye out? There has to be. What do you?
Isn't that what confession is for?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think you're right. So that's why we have that, and we've got church and we've got Bible study and we've got all these things that can turn us away from that.
I think also it's rather than cutting off your arm. So Jesus says cutting off your arm, plucking out your eye, in the sense that if you don't have them, you will not commit these acts. But I think for us as a practical, in a practical sense, it's about remodeling and reshaping how we do things. Even when we do fall into sin, making sure we do the things that are right, like confessing regularly and repenting and being active in our relationship with God, making sure that we're getting closer with God to ensure that these things don't happen, and modeling ourselves in order. So rather than cutting off a hand, you have a new hand or you have a new set of eyes, sort of thing. So it's pretty much the same thing as cutting off your hand. It's not there anymore, but you have, obviously, with your hand still physically there, but a new sort of hand, new set of eyes, sort of thing.
So I think obviously as well, communion is a very strong part of that. Repentance, all that sort of helps you get over the sin or something that is sort of bad that you've done in your life. But I think this verse was really important to show that don't sort of treat kids are really important, and whatever we teach them, whatever we show them in our actions and in our ways, it's really important. That's why parents play a very, very crucial part in the upbringing of a child. And the years of being a child is the time when you're learning so much.
And most vulnerable.
Yeah, and that's the time if you feed the child the wrong information and war and hate, then obviously they're going to grow up and they're going to influence the people around them that war and hate is the right message. And so I think we need to be very diligent with our young kids.
I thought about something here. It could be Jesus trying to say if just one part is gonna make you whole worse, just stay away with it. It's he's trying to say try to avoid situation or try to avoid places that could even be influence even parts of you. Even you cannot go somewhere and said that's where I'll be there, even if it's a bad place or a bad situation or anything like that, and then it has to affect you. So I think the part of cutting your hands or cutting your eyes off is just a symbolism of keep away of this situation or these places or who could influence you badly or something that.
If there's a weakness that you have, or if there is sin, don't go to the place where it's going to cause you to do that sin. So that's a very good point. Let us know what you guys think on our Facebook page, 92.3 FM, 3ZZZ, Coptic Youth. Stay tuned. And that's all the time we have for you guys. Thanks again for joining us. Thanks, Mina, for coming in.
Not a problem, Mickey.
Thanks, Melinda, for coming in.
Thanks.
Thanks, Daniel, for coming in as well.
Thank you.
As always, you can listen to this program again on our Facebook page. You'll have the link there, 92.3 FM, 3ZZZ Coptic Youth Radio. We're also on SoundCloud, 3ZZZ Coptic Youth Radio. And we're also on iTunes. Just search Coptic Youth Radio. That's it from us here in Melbourne studios. See you guys next week. Tuned in and stay tuned for the following program.